for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello everyone, welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. And joining me today is going to be Gordon Gianninoto, and he's a popular guest on many different shows. And he usually discusses Nibiru and Poleshifts and UFOs, which is, again, going to be his topic today. And he's been a pretty frequent guest on my show as well as some of the others, and we're always glad to have him back. And in fact, he's going to be joining me Thursday, March the 6th for my Thursday slot over at Revolution Radio. And before we get started in today's show, folks, I'd like to remind everybody that I've just entered into an agreement with the folks over at Revolution Radio at www.freedomslips.com that I would come over there and host my show every Thursday from 1 to 3 Eastern Standard Time. And that's going to be an ongoing thing is what I was trying to think of to say. My brain just kind of went on me there for a minute. So I'll be looking for guests to do over there, just like I have them to do over here. It should not be any real difficulty. I also want to let everybody know that I've had a cancellation for next week on, actually, that's going to be this coming Wednesday, the 16th. And, I had a breast cancer awareness thing to go to, so they decided they couldn't make this opening here, and we rescheduled for further down the road. Actually, that's not the 16th. I'm looking at the new date I gave them on the schedule. The actual date would be the 19th. It's coming Wednesday the 19th. So what I have decided to do is to host an open mic night where anybody, whether they be regular guests or listeners or other radio show hosts or whatever, could just call right on in and discuss whatever's on their mind that they'd like to get off their chest or whatever. Could be any topic whatsoever. The only thing is we don't do anything that ain't G-rated around here. So when I say no topic is taboo, I don't mean we can get on here and discuss things of that kind of nature. But, I mean in the general sense, no topic is taboo. Like no cover-ups or anything that people don't want to talk about other than that. Remember, we do have kids that listen in after all. So, Johnny, how you doing today?
Well, you can call me Gordon, and I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Where did I say Johnny? I am so sorry.
That's okay. So we're waiting for 18 inches of snow here in Maine on the coast.
You was telling me that in Skype earlier before we called in for the show. So you're going to be trudging more than knee deep, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. And then when you get 60-mile-an-hour winds and 18 inches of snow, so we're waiting for a lot of fun. We're so tired of winter. We had, in December to January, we had 45 below zero wind chills.
Okay, now every time you go to speak, we got an echo right now, but you keep getting a noise.
Oh, I've got gold bars. I hope that doesn't last. You know, since I was last on with you, I have an upgraded internet service, so it should be better. But I got gold bars right now. Who knows why? Probably everybody's home for the storm on the computer, because I have shared internet.
Yeah, that could be what it is. I know you've had problems in the past behind the shared internet when we try to conduct this on Skype. Now, you did give me a phone number to call you if need be, and yes. I'm trying to hold off on that if I possibly can, because I did not get a chance to check it with Skype to see if it's on the list of places I can call for the price I've already paid. I don't think I could afford to pay any extra.
Oh, well, if necessary, can I call you?
Yeah, that would be fine as well. In fact,
Well, you type that little into the text bubble there. Type your number, and that way I'll call it if I have to.
okay. And according to a listener in the chat room, the problem sorted itself out, so maybe what you got will last, and in the meantime, I'll get you the number down here at the bottom. I also want to let everybody know that I've signed up with TuneIn.com, and what they do is they're kind of like a phone app that you can download to your Android, your iPhone, your iPad, your BlackBerry, or any of those. It will actually work on 200 different platforms, and that way you, the listener, if you've got an iPhone, a BlackBerry, or an Android, can find my show. All you have to do is download the TuneIn.com, open up the app, and type in Talk Now Radio through TuneIn's search engine, and it will take you to my stream, and you can just click on it and play it right in your iPhone. Now, I'm waiting for them to approve it. It'll be about 3 days, but once it is approved, it should be a very convenient thing for y'all. And going
Well, that's
back
nice.
to that,
You're listener supported too, aren't you, Royce?
yes, sir, I am listener supported, and I have been since before I got on Revolution Radio. I didn't get the idea from them.
Yeah. Well, no, I always say that, first of all, you're not going to hear radio like this on the mainstream media. So if you have any money, and I know it's a tough economy because I'm living month to month myself, but if you have any money at all, could you donate it to Royce? And if you can't do that, then at least try and tell 5 other people that, about this, so that spreads. If there's a certain percentage of listeners who are going to donate, if you increase the listeners, then you increase the donation. So if you yourself can't donate money, at least you could go tell 5 other people. There's this great state radio program that I listen to, and that would help you.
Yes, that would definitely help. The truth of the matter is I've heard complaints from some listeners of other shows that tell me that they used to like a show they were listening to, and they think that the host started playing up to the to his sponsors and would no longer cover material that they wanted to see covered. So when listeners support their favorite radio show that is bringing information that you can't find in some of the mainstream channels, they're keeping that same information flow going, because if the only way for a show to survive is to get sponsored, well, they lose their sponsorship, there's no show. So if you can help make sure that does not happen with shows like mine, like over at Revolution Radio, they've got some 50 or 60 hosts over there bringing information that you don't hear on mainstream. I wouldn't recommend you do it just any host. Find one that you like, that really brings you information you think is worthwhile and that you want to make sure you can always access. You bring it to the wrong one, you may be not happy where your money goes. So, Johnny, you telling me that you got some new information from...
oh, my God. Stuff is really happening. I've been on your show talking before about how unselfish extraterrestrials can spot unselfish people, and that's because this is a dark planet surrounded by clouds of violence, greed, and selfishness. And people who are unselfish have bright auras like candles in the darkness, and so they're really easy to spot. And there's a lot of them here because of what's about to happen with Planet X coming into the inner solar system and rounding the sun, facing the Earth in 2003. And then like Nancy Leader and Zeta Talk, who, I readily admit a lot of people don't like her or they don't like the information, but she's been in telepathic contact with the human Zetas, the little gray aliens, since 1995, and she's taken questions from the public since then, and then she asks them the question, and then she types out the answer. If you go to zetatalk.com, you'll see 40,000 pages of information there. So this is 19 years of this is a lot of information. And
that's Nancy
but I really, what? Nancy Leader.
Yes, what I meant to say was Leader. I somehow got her crossed her up with William Strieber, I think, for a minute.
Oh yeah, Whitley Strieber.
Oh my God, I'm doing messing up names today. I
Yeah.
have not had my first cup of coffee today, and I just had my first sip a few minutes ago, and maybe my mind just ain't got going yet.
Oh well, I'll have to slap you with a wet fettuccine noodle.
Okay, but yeah, this is Nancy Leader's site, right?
Yeah. So yeah, her website, zetatalk.com. So, I realize, listen, there's a lot of you that are skeptical about extraterrestrials, that they even exist, that they're not all selfish or trying to do us in. And then you're skeptical about Planet X, also called Nibiru by the Sumerians, that it would come into the solar system every 3,657 years. And then you're skeptical about whether the president would ever announce it beforehand. Now, logically, I said, and I know the government's lost a lot of credibility anyway. So there's people already out there that don't believe a word that the government says. But, if suddenly everybody looks up in the sky and sees Planet X in the sky, and then they realize that's a huge planet 4 times the size of the Earth, and the government hasn't said a word about it, I don't think at that point that anybody, even the people that really trust the government and like the government, are ever going to believe another word they ever might say. So I've been saying
late for that one anyway. That ship's already sailed.
Yeah. Well, that's what. So, I've been saying for almost 2 years now that the government had to announce it, because in my mind, how can they not announce it? I mean, I know why they wouldn't announce it, because if you go read Zetatalk, you see there might be 600-foot, there will be 600-foot tidal waves. There would be, massive earthquakes and all kinds of destruction. So, how can you not, mention that? But you can see why they wouldn't want to, because what are they going to do? Announce simultaneously that they've taken control of Montana, Wyoming, and Nebraska, and everyone should on the coast, on all 3 coasts of the United States, should move inland, and they're going to give you all a bag of GMO seed and a brand new shovel and say good luck. So, there's all kinds of little sub issues to that. But you know what? I'm not going to talk about all the skeptics and everything. I'm just going to tell you the information that I have, which I firmly believe, which is that the information in Zetatalk's 100% true. And I have taken pictures of Planet X myself. It's at the 5 o'clock position. It's not in line with the Earth and the Sun. But if you just look to the lower right of the Sun, you'll see this cloudy, bright area. And when people get pictures of that, they call that pictures of 2 suns. Well, actually, the big sun, the regular sun, and then below it to the right. And that's in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, everything's upside down, of course. So it looks like it's at the 10 o'clock position. But anyway, so I have it from 2 reliable sources. And this is really, breaking news unless you read Zetatalk all the time. That before the end of the month, jointly, the presidents of the United States, Russia, and China are going to announce, and you got to love this, Planet X, extraterrestrials, and poleshift. So many people.
Did I hear you say? And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I got to make sure I heard you correctly. Did I hear you say the United States in that group?
Yes, United States, Russia, and China.
That's hard to believe.
Yes,
they're the only ones that I know of that's been holding out.
Yeah, because you see, the Olympics end on Sunday the 23rd, and the last day of the month is Friday the 28th. Now, Nancy Leader's been talking about that the Zetas have said that they would announce on a Friday, because then all the markets would be closed. So because if they announce that, let's say in the morning, within an hour, probably the stock markets in at least North America and Europe would go to hell. And if this is a joint announcement around the world, then, pandemonium would, so to minimize economic pandemonium, they would announce it on a Friday night. Well, what's today, the 15th, right? So you've only got 13 more days, and you've only got 13 more days in February. So this isn't something that you have to wait like 6 months or a year to see if this is true. It's 13 days. And if they wait till the Olympics are over. Then that gives you the last 4 days of February. And the last day is Friday the 28th, which would be my estimation of when it would be. But this is where this comes from. Courtney Brown, who has the farsightinstitute.org, and he's a famous remote viewer. He's written books. He works for the CIA and the government. He's a tenured professor at his university, and that's where he usually is to be found. He has a team of remote viewers, and from time to time they remote view different things, some of which people might find interesting or might not. And if you recall, he had said in 2012 that he had his team remote view the year 2008, June of 2008, and then remote view June of 2013 and see if there were any differences. And they focused on 8 cities that were coastal cities. And when they remote viewed June of 2013, he said that all the cities were destroyed. Any remaining buildings had holes in their roofs, and that it looked like a tidal wave had washed inland and destroyed everything, and the remote viewers, all they could see was a few stragglers going inland with nothing, just walking inland. And so then, if you remember the meteor breaking up over that Russian city,
I think I have a vague memory of that being on the...
Remember all those rocks, and it was amazing because if it had stayed in one piece, it would have taken out the whole city, but it broke into pieces. Now, of course, that was previously it was known as a secret Russian city, and because it had a top secret Russian air base next to it. And then there's some people who looked at the video of the rocks coming in, and it looked like maybe a beam weapon was used. And of course, that secret airbase would probably have such a weapon, that they used it to break it up. And that's why the whole city wasn't destroyed. Instead, pieces fell everywhere. So he said, now he was on the Kevin Smith show, and they were taking calls. So I called in, and this is before the rocks from Russia. And I said, describing holes in the roofs of the rocks, because when Planet X causes poleshift, then it'll move out of the solar system trailing rocks and moons behind it, and the rocks will shower the Earth. There'll be a fall of rocks that will destroy buildings, kill people, and set forest fires, and set a lot of things on fire, because there'll be basically a ton of meteors. It'll be like a rock shower for maybe at least a day, maybe 3 days. And so I said to him on the Kevin Smith show, I said, this is an awful lot like Planet X, and Zeta Talk and Poleshift. And he was really... I don't like him at all. I mean, I'm sure he's a nice person personally, but obviously he's in the bag of CIA, so they pay most of his bills.
Who,
so
Kevin
he said,
Smith is?
No, Courtney Brown,
okay.
The remote view. Because he's always saying that he's got these projects for the government that he can't discuss. You've heard of Ed Dames, and Ed Dames says the same thing. Well, I remote view this and that, but I've got all these secret government projects for the military that I can't discuss. So Courtney Brown is the same way. The CIA is paying his bills. So he said to me, he goes, I don't engage in fantasy. And then he wouldn't talk to me. So he really was very condescending. And okay, so I realize why the CIA doesn't want to point people to go read Zeta Talk, because if you read Zeta Talk, you're going to want to run for your life. You're going to want to go live on a mountaintop somewhere where there's lots of food, out in the wild or in the ocean or wherever. It depends on where the mountain is. And then, it's run for your life, save yourself. So, I could see why they wouldn't want to do that. So, but he said that was fantasy. So, okay, so he had this prediction in June of 2013 came and nothing happened. And then the rocks fell over Russia. I forget what the date of that was, but then he said, well, that's what my viewers saw was these rocks over Russia, but he forgets that he intentionally directed the remote viewing team to view 8 coastal cities. And this city in Russia where the rocks fell, where the big meteor came apart into pieces, was well inland by like at least 1,000 miles. And it wasn't one of the 8 cities. So, it's like NASA. Anything they ever say is always right. They're never wrong. And that's the way Courtney Brown is. So you got to take that with a, just realize that that's going on. But anyway, on January 29th, on the farsightinstitute.org and on his Facebook page, because I'm not on Facebook, but who isn't,
I thought you was.
No, I'm not, but my wife is.
Oh, okay. That's why I got the idea.
Yeah, so he said, he posted on January 29th, 2 weeks ago, that his remote viewers had discovered, and this is a quote, "In February, an announcement will be made that will change the world forever," unquote. Well, that's pretty big, wouldn't you say, Royce?
Yeah, but it's also one that's been made before.
Well, no, you've never had the President of the United States announce extraterrestrials.
Well, I didn't say, okay. I'm talking about the claim that news that's going to change the world has been made by more than one person before.
Well, I mean, if anybody listened to me about my ET experiences, that should have changed the world, but did it? I don't know. I don't think so.
But if the president was to make such an announcement, that would cause a huge stir everywhere, including ufology circles. Then everybody would say it was a misinformation campaign caused by the president himself, no doubt.
Well, right, because his trustworthiness has fallen, to say the least. But if it's jointly made by the presidents of China, Russia, and the United States, then I think everybody's got to sit down and go, huh? What? Oh my God! And of course, it's no great prediction that if that announcement is made, that then it would change the world forever. Can you imagine if they announce it Friday, February 28th, what March 1st is going to be like?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and in fact, Richard Dolan not long ago came out with a book called AD that was going to be after the disclosure, in other words, that covered all the kind of pandemonium, and he wrote a 300-page book about things that would probably happen after such an event.
Yeah, so what happens is, I said Nancy Leader takes questions from the public. So back when Courtney Brown had done that remote viewing for June of 2013, and he said that the reason why he did that comparison of 8 coastal cities between June of 2008 and June of 2013 was because he wanted to see the effects of global warming, which, hey, I don't think there's anybody in Maine left that believes in global warming unless they just, they're stubborn, living in denial. But so I had asked Nancy Leader about that, and she did not take that as a question. So the Zetas never directly addressed, as far as I know, his prediction of June of 2013, which, of course, that didn't even come true. But then he said later, the rocks over Russia, that was fulfillment of my team's remote viewing. So once again, we're never wrong. Well, okay, fine, But anyway, so Nancy took the question in the first week of February, and the Zetas answered it, and she published the answer in the February 8th newsletter. Now, if you go to Zeta Talk, there's a little box on the left where you can click on newsletters, and the newsletters are arranged every week since the beginning, going back to 1995. It was a gradual evolution to where it became a weekly thing, but they're all listed there. And if you look at the one for February 8th, it's got the quote from Courtney Brown, and then the question to the Zetas, and then the answer. And the answer is, yes, Courtney Brown is right. The presidents of the United States, Russia, and China are going to jointly announce. That way, even if they kidnap or kill Obama or the Russian president or the Chinese president, there'll still be 2 out of 3. And you know what they say, Royce, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Well, yeah, they say that, but I wonder how accurate that is.
I'm sorry. But anyway, So they said on February 8th that Courtney Brown's statement of January 29th. So then, I've been quite friendly with Nancy Leader. I personally like her. She's a little difficult to deal with, and I can understand her frustration. She's been doing this for 19 years, and people still think she's like, doesn't know what day it is. And so, okay, there's all kinds of things that people say about anyone that sees extraterrestrials or thinks they're there or says they're there or talks to them. So, this is not surprising, but around the world, all the governments are reading this stuff, bankers are throwing themselves out of windows or being killed. I mean, why would a 30-year-old guy throw himself out of a skyscraper in New York? And why 4 in 1 week? And one shot himself with a nail gun? Okay, well, he was under investigation for fraud, and maybe he didn't have a gun because it's hard to legally have a gun in New York, and he had a nail gun. But you don't shoot yourself what did he shoot himself, 8 or 9 times with a nail gun? And then you've got 47 congressmen and senators announcing last week or in the last 2 weeks that they're not running for re-election. So don't you think that this is spreading around on the inside of the halls of power, and the leaders are going, well, I'm not staying in Washington for that. No way. So I called Nancy and I said, I love that statement because I've been waiting almost 2 years, as many people have, for this announcement, because she started saying that President Obama was trying to announce it. And everybody, all the conservatives and the Republicans, were trying to sabotage it to keep that from being announced, because the people that are in power and have the money, they want the advantage. They want to know when poleshift is so that the average person like you and me, Royce, can be sacrificed. We're expendable. So,
especially in my health. If you're not, I hear tell that those that are not productive and can't work are considered expendable first.
Yeah, exactly. Any defect, you're out. And really, the only ones they'd really be really interested in saving were people probably between the age of 15 and 30 who could be good workers.
I would imagine they'd want to save the babies and small children for future workers.
Well, yeah, and then for breeding, and who knows what they'd be up to, But anyway, Nancy said that she had read the words of the announcement. They were sent to every single government in the world in May of 2013. So she has read the wording of the announcement, and she said that she knows the exact date in February, but she would not tell me. So, okay. And then I said, do you really think they're going to point everybody to Zeta Talk? And she said, absolutely. So, like I said, if you go to Zeta Talk and you see the maps and the description of poleshift, you're going to realize, because one of the things is that 60% of the world population will die in earthquakes and in disasters, including tidal waves. And then after poleshift, another 30% will die from disease, starvation, injuries, and mental illness and crime. So when you read Zeta Talk, you're left with maybe 10% of the population of the Earth. So and so many people, because I keep bringing this up, even if people don't want me to bring it up, I keep bringing it up that this announcement's going to be made. Because, like I said, logically for me, I don't see how they can't just not announce it, because if they announce it and they say, but if we all work together and we don't need to have any rioting and if we're all kind to one another, I don't know what they would say, but if they say that, then that's better than saying, run for your life. But Nancy says they're going to actually point people to go read Zeta Talk. So can't take more than 3 days to sweep the whole world, where people, because there's 7 Zeta Talks. There's Zeta Talk 1, there's Zeta Talk 2, I think, ZetaTalk3.com, ZetaTalk4.com, ZetaTalk 5, 6. So there's all these multiple servers so that the whole world could access it simultaneously.
Right.
So if if they say, well, people have been saying they're never going to, and I've even said it, they're never going to disclose extraterrestrials, because the secret behind that is that selfish extraterrestrials contacted the U.S. government because the U.S. government is selfish. And together they've done all kinds of horrible things, like when you're watching TV and you accidentally turn to a zombie apocalypse movie and you think, oh my God, I don't want to watch that, and you switch the channel. These are things so horrendous that everything you can possibly imagine that selfish extraterrestrials could do with the U.S. government has probably been happening. And just to give you an example, cattle mutilations and things related to that. So, probably they wouldn't want to disclose it as long as any of the people that made the original deals are still alive. And of course, a lot of them are getting quite elderly now.
Yeah.
And it's clear that NASA was. They first learned of poleshift probably in the 1940s or possibly even earlier, but at least by Roswell, they knew about poleshift. And NASA wasn't started till 1957. And NASA has on the badge, the cloth patch badge that they wear on their NASA uniforms, has got a picture of Orion, and Orion is the direction from which Planet X comes back every 3,657 years. And they sent a satellite up with infrared in 1983 to see if they could spot it incoming, and they did. And on the headline of every newspaper in the country the next day was Planet X discovered. And then the next day they go, and this is NASA and JPL, and how often do they take back what they say? And the next day they said, oops, no, we thought we discovered Planet X, but we're still looking. And to me, that night, in December of 1983, when it was announced on the front page of every major newspaper in the country, everyone must have said, what does that mean? And then NASA and JPL go, oops, we can't tell you. So another thing they could do is say that, well, Reagan was president and he made anything related to Planet X top secret. And other presidents before him had made everything with extraterrestrials top secret. But now your loving star child President Barack Obama, after wrestling with the bureaucracy, I finally got all the facts, and I'm declaring that it's not secret anymore, and I'm telling you. So you can see what a big issue that is, just to disclose extraterrestrials. But if you disclose that a planet is a so-called, I loved it because they never said that it was even possible until last year. They go, oh, we've discovered that the rogue planets can go through solar systems and keep on going. Maybe come back too. So,
if they're in an orbit, they would have to come back eventually.
Well, of course, and NASA has done anything they can to avoid mentioning Zeta Talk, Planet X, and Nancy Lieder. Because, like I said, and even if you don't believe it, even if you don't believe in extraterrestrials, you don't believe in telepathy, you don't believe in unselfish extraterrestrials, and it doesn't matter. Go read Zeta Talk and tell me that 40,000 pages is made up. I mean, come on. That's what I'm telling people to do. If you really want to look into this yourself as a result of what I'm saying, then do it. Now, the Zetas have been saying that the unselfish extraterrestrials, there's 1,000 different races. There are some races that are even like jellyfish or worms and various groups who it's not possible for them to build a spaceship and come to Earth. But they're so advanced on their planet, where that's the highest form of life, they telepathically got in touch with other unselfish extraterrestrials who brought them. So anyway, there's 1,000 races of unselfish extraterrestrials on Earth here right now, all on the next dimension up, the fourth dimension, which leads to another part of Zeta Talk, which is that it's essentially like the Bible says, the meek will inherit the earth. And the reason why is because when you tune to a radio station and you have the stations below that on the dial and above that on the dial, and then you tune to a station that's higher, that's what the unselfish extraterrestrials are fourth dimensional beings. Like if I said that the Earth is third dimensional right now, then that's the next level up. So in other words, the frequency of Earth after this event is going to change. And forever thereafter, only unselfish souls are going to be allowed to be born on the earth. And there's going to be open contact with unselfish extraterrestrials. So it's like there's a graduation going on, and this is the catalyst for it. And of course, as you look around you realize that so few of anybody you know is awake by any standard that you would measure being awake, let alone being spiritual or living by the golden rule or being kind or empathetic, that, you question in your mind, how could this even be possible? And you see that there are some really unselfish beings on Earth who are like, sources of light and love. And those people are ready to graduate, and the Earth has reached a point where they can't be held back. So everyone that's not ready is going to have to go die and go live somewhere else. So that's part of the Zeta Talk too. And if any of what I'm saying interests you, go read it. I mean, it's free. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to do anything. And it has its own Google search engine. So what's happening is the unselfish extraterrestrials decided to take everybody on Earth up on the saucers and tell them what's going to happen. Now, you've done a lot of interviews, Royce, and you know that the ETs use screen memory. So a person might go, well, I had a dream of an owl. Or I looked up from my desk and I saw an owl looking at me through the window. Or a kid says, I saw this deer with big eyes and I followed it into the woods. And I don't know where the last 3 hours went, but that's all I remember. And those are called screen memories, right?
Right. Now, also, when you get a chance here, Gordon, I've been holding a question in from Vera, just to let you know.
Okay.
But go ahead with what you were going to say real quick,
So they're first they took all the star children, in other words, reincarnated humans from other planets who were very advanced and came here to be here at this time to slant the whole operation towards success. So first they're taking up the star children, then they're taking the older souls who have reincarnated many times, and then finally they're taking everyone, even if they're not really what you'd call awake. They're taking them all up, and they're telling everybody what's about to happen and creating a screen memory so that it's not consciously, most people cannot consciously remember this at all. And so these are the incidents that have happened to us since Christmas, particularly to my wife, that I want to tell everybody about, because this is consistent with the fact of the ETs taking people up and showing them that, yes, it's real, we're here, and there are going to be disasters, and we'll work with the unselfish people. People say, well, it's our planet, we screwed it up, we've got to fix it, they're not going to rescue us. But I don't know if they're going to rescue anybody or some people. But anyway, so there's 1,000 unselfish extraterrestrials races here on Earth, and they divided themselves up into 40 different working groups. And the group that got North America is the little gray aliens, the Zetas, and they're 100% human. So if you have such an experience in North America, undoubtedly you were taken up on a Zeta ship with people from your community, probably your family and the community, and then you're told about the future, and then when you come back, you don't remember, but you have a sort of like a pleasant screen memory, but you're not sure why. And you just go, well, I had an interesting dream last night, but you can't put your finger on it. So, this is all very, interesting, because it shows that the extraterrestrials are here watching over us, and they do care about what's happening, and they, are contacting people, whether you consciously remember it or not. So, what started this off was that on December 26th, my wife, Janet, was having a dream where she, was thinking, well, what if Gordon wasn't around? And I've been a really important part in her life, and we're not married, but we've been together 24 years. And we've had dozens and dozens of experience with extraterrestrials. We've had ships in our yard, we've had ETs in our yard, and we've had ETs in our house. And I've talked about some of that on your previous shows.
Right.
So she was having this dream that she was feeling sad, like if I wasn't around, what would become of her? And while she's dreaming that, all of a sudden a Zeta popped into her dream and said, Janet, you're never alone. We are always with you. And the very next time you go outside, we will show you. So she woke up Friday morning. That was Thursday, the 26th of December, the day after Christmas. She woke up and said she had that dream. So it was an incredible thick fog. I mean, you could cut it with a knife, and it was drizzling. And we heat with wood with a wood stove. And we have all this cut and split wood on top of the mountain about 200 feet away. And then we have a cart, a wagon that we cover in front of the door. So we take the tractor and we go up and fill it on top of the mountain with more wood, and we dump the bucket of wood into the wagon and then cover it with a tarp again. So we should have done that Friday morning. After Janet told me about the dream, I said, well, we don't have enough firewood at the house to last the night. We've got to go get more firewood. But then looking outside with the rain, the fog, and the drizzle, it was pretty miserable. And so there was no motivation to run outside and do that. So then we let the day go by, and this is Friday the 27th, and then the sun set at 4 o'clock. Well, we're pretty far north, so I know a lot of you that are south of that find that funny, but that's what we get in the winter, is it sets actually even before 4 o'clock. But December 26th, 27th, the sun set at 4 o'clock. So we're sitting around talking, and we said we've got to go out and get some firewood before it gets too late, because we really don't want to go out after we use the last stick, and now it's 10 or 11 p.m. Even though the tractor has headlights, still it's no fun. So, and whenever you get warm air coming in over 4 feet of snow, it just makes a fog that's so thick you can't believe it. And so we said, okay. At 5 o'clock, we said, okay, we'll go out and get the firewood. So I was she put on her work clothes and her boots, and she headed out the door, and I was still behind in the house, cause I've been waiting for a hip replacement surgery. And it hurts for me to walk fast or do anything fast with my right leg. So I was still putting my boots on, and she goes outside, and the glass door faces north, and, you go out, and there's a granite door stone there that's 4 feet by 3 feet by 3 inches thick that I cut myself. So when you go out the glass door, there's this granite stone, and then you turn to the right, and the driveway is 30 feet away. And after about 15 feet, you're clear of the building, and you can see towards the top of the mountain, where we have this little cabin that the only reason it's still there is because they put a piece of angle iron on the peak of the roof and put a chain from granite up over the building and back down the other side, because we've had winds since I put that building up of 165 miles an hour. So she turned the corner, and she goes, oh, my God. She goes, there's a UFO. She goes, Gordon, come right out. And so I'm hurrying as fast as I can, and she's out there looking at it. She's going, quick. She goes, it's bright red like an LED stop sign, and it's huge. It's a sphere. It's a ball. And it's above the little cabin on top of the mountain, which is about 200 feet away. And so I'm hurrying, and all of a sudden she goes, up. She goes, it's like somebody threw a switch, and it's back to darkness. So going back to her dream, they said, Janet, we're always with you, and we'll show you the next time you go outside. And that was the next time she went outside, and there it was. And so on my Skype picture, if you see that, Royce, you see an illustration of this red sphere in the sky above this little cabin. It's really hard to tell what it is.
Yeah, I saw it in your Skype picture.
And that's not a photograph. That's an illustration. And I mean, even if you had a camera, you wouldn't go out in this heavy drizzle and fog to go cut and split firewood. I mean, so there wasn't any picture. So anyway, she felt like, wow, they promised me that they would show me the next time I go outside, and here I am, and they showed me. And she described it as 10 times the diameter of the full moon. Definitely a sphere. Definitely looking in that direction from the house, that's looking towards the ocean. And we're on a mountaintop 2 miles back from the ocean. And if it were clear, you could look out and see 300 islands. And, the fog was so thick, we really even couldn't see the cabin from the house. Yet above it was this gigantic glowing red sphere like a mothership. And, so she was really excited. And, we get the firewood and she goes to sleep. And Saturday morning she wakes up and she goes, "You're not going to believe this dream I had last night." She goes, now she has a sister Nancy that lives about 20 miles east of us who does believe in ghosts, but she's really kind of skeptical about UFOs and she's never really had that kind of an experience. And so they don't really know what to think of us. And, Janet with her family is like the black sheep, and the person she's closest to is this sister Nancy. And Nancy never calls us, ever. The only reason they've ever had any conversations in the last 24 years is because Janet calls Nancy. So Janet comes downstairs, she makes some coffee, she's sitting there telling me about this dream. And in the dream, she and her sister Nancy were in this hotel at Disney World or Disneyland. And there were some extraterrestrials in the room dressed as clowns. Well, I gotta say, I've never liked clowns. I don't know why, but they just give me the heebie-jeebies. And even as a child, if somebody said, "Let's go see the clowns," I would run the other way. Like, who needs that? And but anyway, she's in this giant room of a hotel that she interpreted. So you see, she doesn't even always have a straight memory of what happened. She has a sort of a screen memory, but yet she can remember more than most people. So she interpreted this, that they were in Disneyland for who knows why, because we're in Maine. And there were some extraterrestrials dressed as clowns, and there were other people from the community in this ballroom or this large room. But Nancy was going around the walls of the room touching stuff, just marveling over the technology, and she couldn't get over it. And she's like, "Oh my God." And Janet kept saying, "Stop doing that and come over here and talk to these people." And Nancy was like, couldn't do it because she had never seen stuff like that before. So Janet's telling me this dream when all of a sudden the phone rings and it's Nancy. And she goes, "Oh my God." 'Cause she and her husband have a cabin on a lake about 40 miles from here. And it's really lonely in the winter, but theirs is a modern cabin and they go spend the winter there. So, I mean, they go up there in the winter. So she and her husband had gone to the cabin Friday night and spent the night. So Nancy goes to Janet. She says, "Did you see that full moon last night? Oh my God." And their modern little cabin has like an A-frame ceiling on the second floor, which is all just one bedroom because it's a teensy little cabin. And the glass goes right up to the peak and it all faces the lake. And then there's a bed across the room. When they lay in the bed, because I've been up there and seen the room, and when they lay in bed, they're looking out these glass windows towards the lake. And Nancy goes, "Did you see that full moon?" She goes, I shook Sherm over and over and over, and I tried to wake him up, and he wouldn't wake up. And so I decided, okay, well, I'll just enjoy this beautiful sight of this full moon. And then she lay back on the pillow, and she was rearranging her comforter. And as she was hitting her comforter, tapping it to rearrange it, these little sparkles were coming out of the comforter and rising up and filling the whole room with gold and silver sparkles.
Okay, now, Gordon, I just wanted to let you know, we had a caller call in and they're waiting right now. And in addition to that, we still got Vera's question.
Okay, so Nancy says, "Does Gordon own a Geiger counter?" So who knows why she said that. And so Janet hands the phone to me, and Nancy goes, "Do you have a Geiger counter? Because I think my comforter is radioactive." And I said, "Nancy, are you aware of the phases of the moon?" And she goes, "No." And you'd think with her husband Sherm being a fisherman that she would be, but I mean, she knows of it, but she's not aware of them. And I said, "Well, do you realize that on the new moon, the moon is near the sun? So when the sun sets, there is no moon. And then when it's near the full moon, the sun sets and the moon is in the sky." And she goes, "Yeah, well, it was a beautiful full moon last night. Did you see it?" And I said, "Nancy, it was the new moon. There was no moon in the sky. What you saw was a flying saucer, and you were on it with your sister, and the comforter is not radioactive, and what it is a screen memory for you to have a pleasant recall without knowing any of the details. So you woke up. I said it was probably an out-of-body experience. You're looking through the glass. You're seeing the flying saucer overhead. You're patting the comforter. The little sparkles rise up, and you have a pleasant memory of that. And she goes, "Oh, it was beautiful." And I said, "Yes, but it wasn't the moon. It was a flying saucer, and your comforter is not radioactive. I do have a Geiger counter, but the odds that your comforter is radioactive, and even if it was radioactive, why would little sparkles come off it and fill the room and then stay in the room, stay in the air, filling the room?" And she goes, "Well, I'm going to ask my other sister." So, and we know her other sister is like all science, and if it hasn't been announced at Harvard, it doesn't exist. So she called her other sister in Florida, and the sister in Florida said, "Well, was it cold that night?" And Nancy said, "Oh yeah, it was cold." And the sister said, "Oh, that's static electricity." So clearly, I don't know what your listeners will think of it, but clearly to Janet and me, we were on a saucer and we took her sister up, but not her sister's husband, and her sister has no memory of it, but Janet saw her and she was interested in the technology, which of course I would think a lot of people being on a flying saucer for the first time would just be fascinated with that. So I'll take the questions.
I would be. Okay, well, before we bring James into this, real quick, because Vera has been waiting very patiently and she's an ardent fan of yours, let's get to her question first. Well, I pasted it right over here. She was asking me about if you got the latest on Courtney's prediction, and I don't see where I pasted it, although I know I did. Let me come to her. Here it is. And
all he said was, yeah, go ahead.
Does Gordon have any idea what Courtney is hinting about in his announcement post? He says it's not disclosure. Yeah, Courtney's been hinting on Facebook over the last few days, and you're not on Facebook, so you probably didn't know this, about some big announcement coming up. He says it's not disclosure, but he's not saying to anybody what it is. You got any clues on it?
Well, I do from talking to Nancy Leader, and we agreed that Courtney Brown definitely works for the CIA, and anything that he gets, I mean, what can anybody point to that he was 100% accurate about? I don't think there is such a thing, but any information that he got must have been from the CIA, and the CIA must know about the announcement, and they also must know about whatever the government is planning to do with Russia and China. So clearly, he was given that information. He can say that his team of remote viewers discovered that, but considering that it's been on Zeta Talk for almost 2 years now, that's hardly anything news except for the date. And how would he get the date exactly unless the CIA gave it to him? So I believe that's what it is, that the CIA gave him that date. But no, I don't believe that he himself, he would probably rather die than say, go read Zeta Talk. And probably the CIA would rather kill him than have him mention that. So there's a few issues going on there, but no, we don't know. He's never said he was going to say what the announcement is. But, if there's a joint announcement from the United States, Russia, and China, and it involves Planet X, and how can that not then lead to extraterrestrials? Because it should take you about 5 minutes if you do a Google search to look up a planet in the solar system, or a new planet, or an incoming planet, or a rogue planet, whatever words you want to use. It should take you about 2 minutes to discover that there's Zeta Talk, because all the links are to the 12th planet. That's what Zecharia Sitchin called it. The Sumerians called it Nibiru. The Egyptians called it Neteru. It's called the winged globe. They're emblems of a circle with wings around the world, even as old as 18,000 years. The Sumerians said that the humans from from Planet X have been on Earth were on Earth for 1 million years. So, I don't know what game Courtney is playing. Everybody finds it interesting that he announced this. And look, any part of that is going to change the world forever. I don't think there's anybody that can, whether or not there's actually going to be this announcement. Like a lot of people say, well, I'll eat my hat if anything gets announced. But still, if any of it is announced, there's no way that you can go to Zeta Talk without going, well, where did this information come from? And then you read in Zeta Talk where it came from, and it's unselfish extraterrestrials telepathically answering questions for Nancy Leader in Wisconsin for free for 19 years at great expense to her health. And she's 73 now. She's not in great shape. So, what did Nancy get out of this? She lives in an old farmhouse, and she's got no extra money, and she lives month to month like a lot of us, and most of us. And so how could Nancy even make this stuff up? So, anything that points to a planet in our solar system, almost instantly, there's people like you and me where I've already mentioned it to you and your listeners who go, well, if they say that, I know they're talking about Planet X. But even the people that don't know, just a few minutes of searching on Google, they're going to find out that it's Planet X. And then you're going to learn about Zeta Talk. And then if you wonder where Zeta Talk came from and you find out it's from unselfish extraterrestrials telepathically giving answers from the public, the whole ball of wax gets out, So if you're going to announce it, you might as well tell everybody that at the beginning so you don't seem like an idiot. Because if you don't mention that, then it's like you're covering it up, but you've already let the cat out of the bag or the horse out of the barn. How are you going to get it back? Well, you aren't, And that's why I say, like, within 3 days around the world, it's going to change everything for people. Because first, if there's a planet, they're going to ask, well, is it going to hit the Earth? The answer is no, it's not going to hit the Earth. Number two, is it going to do anything? Yes, it's going to cause poleshift. Number three, what should we do about it? You should run for your life. Because the middle of the country is going to be destroyed by the New Madrid fault. Different parts of the world are going to have volcanoes, earthquakes, sinkings, rising, and these quakes aren't going to be like mild little 3s and 4s. They're going to be 8, 9s, and 10s. So, and like every year, the FEMA's been having what is it called? Shake and not shake and bake, but down there in New Madrid fault area, they have this exercise and they make all the schools go through it. And they're like, well, if there's a big quake, then you should definitely duck under your desk. Okay, fine. But then you see like all this other news and, it seems like individual pieces of information separated everywhere and they're not connected, but they are connected. You've got Homeland Security ordering like billions of bullets. Now, last year, the news was they're going to arm the weathermen. The National Weather Service are going to be packing. And the news from like less than a month ago is they're arming the postal workers. That's a group that really is psychologically stable and they should be armed, shouldn't they, Royce?
Okay.
I can just imagine.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Johnny. I just got a message. Genocide, or James is still waiting to be heard on the telephone, and he wanted me to interrupt and bring him in real quick because he has something to say that's pertinent to where you're at, and he doesn't want to lose the place.
Okay, sure, James. Hi.
Yes, James, are you listening?
Yeah, I'm listening. Thanks for having me on your show. You was talking about the quakes in the center of the country. Well, I live in Oklahoma, and it's kind of odd that you mentioned that because for the past roundabout year, there has been earthquakes in Oklahoma, small ones, and it gets reported. At least one or two gets reported on the news now, about once or twice a month, and they're usually pretty small. But there was a prison, a new prison built here in Oklahoma in the past 5 or 10 years that was built that got that was like kind of like not at the epicenter of it, but it was a part of the quake zone that recently hit, and there was a bunch of cracks and stuff in this new prison. It was kind of interesting that you mentioned that the center part of the country was going to have this big earthquake, because I live here in the center of the country. Pretty much, Oklahoma is pretty much dead center, not exactly dead center, but kind of in the center of the country. And for the past year or two, we've been having small earthquakes, which is something that I don't know if it's happened in the past and they just didn't report it, but now it's getting a lot of airplay on the news. Like I said, once or twice a month there'll be a small 3 to 4 magnitude earthquake somewhere in Oklahoma that gets reported on the news.
Right, and you see what's happening right now is Planet X is not in line between the Earth and the Sun, but it's off to the side. So the North Pole of Planet X is pointed at the Earth's equator, and as the Earth turns, the Great Atlantic Rift, which is right down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and there's a huge upwelling of iron magma. That's like putting an iron bar on the outside of a beach ball. So as you turn the beach ball, and the magnet is towards the Sun, that's the North Pole of Planet X, it pulls. You see, North Poles repel each other. So the North Pole of Planet X pointed at our equator should push the North Pole of Earth back away from the Sun. But as the Earth turns and the Sun rises over the Atlantic, it starts pulling down on this iron bar that goes from Iceland to the Antarctic. So it pulls the North Pole down towards the Sun, and then as soon as the Atlantic Ocean rotates, so the Sun sets on the west side of the Atlantic, then it's released. So then it wobbles back too far, and that brings, the air doesn't move as much as the Earth moves. So the Earth is wobbling under the atmosphere. So that's why you have this wobbling jet stream and the polar vortex, is we're oscillating between tropical air and polar. And so this Earth wobble is going on. Well, this is the biggest, most noticeable effect. I mean, there's times when I go outside and I'm standing, and this is in Maine. I'm standing outside in the moonlight, and the shadow of my head barely covers my shoes. Well, the moon should never be that high in the sky. And then I've noticed days when the sun rises half an hour early, and everyone's noticed, including the Eskimos, that the sun isn't rising at the right time of the year or in the right place. It's too far north, too far south. I actually took a picture 3 years ago where the moon I took 2 pictures consecutively of the moon, and the moon, instead of rising in the east, it went towards the south, so it moved horizontally. Well, the moon doesn't move like that, but the Earth wobble makes it seem like the moon's moving sideways. So there's a lot of, and if everybody would pay attention to all of this stuff, they would realize that these are all signs. And another thing is the crust of the Earth. You would think, being granite, like, where's that going to move to? Everybody knows how heavy granite is. But granite actually floats on top of magma. So the continents are actually floating on top of the core. Now, when we talk about pole shift, we're not talking about magnetic shift at all, because the north pole of the core always faces up. And the magnetic pole of the core never changes. But if you have the crust is like tissue paper wrapped around an orange and it slides, then it's possible, if Planet X gets close enough, that the magnetic pull of its north pole will grab the Great Atlantic Rift and the Earth will stop turning. And that's in the Bible as the 3 days of darkness. Of course, if you're over the Atlantic Ocean, it'll be 3 days of light. But if you're over the Pacific, it will definitely be 3 days of darkness. And in Oklahoma, you'll have 3 days of twilight. So, there's this Earth wobble going on, and then as it gets closer, and every time the Earth turns, it grabs the Earth a little bit stronger each time. There's more of a shudder, and these noises, these strange sounds like screeching subway cars and ringing wine glasses with liquid in them, and sonic booms and things like that, are because of the sloshing of the magma moving the plates and the fingers of the crust breaking off and loosening so that the whole crust can shift. So as Planet X gets close enough and the Earth stops turning, it's going to actually grab, just with magnetism, it's going to grab the great light drift, and Planet X is below the Earth, and it's going to go up above the Earth. So as it goes by, it's going to pull the crust with this magnetic bar in the middle of the Atlantic. It's going to pull it over the North Pole and then release it. And that's why the Zetas say the new North Pole will be the eastern tip of Brazil. So figure out your climate based on that after the pole shift. But that's what's going on, and it's really good to hear, you know, first person stories, because actually, you know, I'm so discouraged with teenagers and kids and even adults. They're all focused on their TV, their laptop, their iPhone, their iPad, their tablet, and their video games, and who gets outside anymore? And when they get outside, how do they recognize anything's different? Because they never knew what was normal to begin with. So it's really kind of pathetic. But there are plenty of listeners who are quite aware and live a little bit closer to nature and are always outside, and they're observing that things are not the same. You know, and everybody's got a different story of what's not the same, but you know, these are big things. And just look at what our food crisis will be this year with, you know, California is 2/3 of our fruits and vegetables and grains. That's in such a drought, they're not even going to give any water to agriculture. And then you've got Florida having frost the other day. In January, they were down below freezing, 28 degrees in a large section of Florida. So, you know, you can see that everything's coming to a crisis. People say the economy is a house of cards. And like I know this economist, well, I know of him, I don't know him, but a friend of mine is friends with him and told me this. He was in an airport and a whole bunch of soldiers got off the airplane from Afghanistan, and he, being a little bit of a wise ass, went up to them and he said, you know, the unemployment rate, they say it's 7%, but it's really closer to 25 to 30% and probably even above that. So now that you guys are being released from the service, where do you think you're going to get jobs? And they all snickered at him and said, what jobs? We're not being released from the service. We're being sent out west to train for urban warfare. So these things all go together, Royce, and, you know, they're little pieces of a puzzle, but when you put them all together, you can see something really big is about to happen. And even people don't know anything say they feel something big is about to happen. And then you ask people that follow the Bible, and you look in the last book of the Bible, Revelation, they're all expecting something big to happen. And then people
they've
that
been
just
expecting something for thousands of years.
Well, I know, but you know, it's you know, and then you've got like these sounds that the Earth are making. They're like the trumpets of the end times. You know, the horns warning everybody. So you know, it's very interesting. And then I was just reading today on Alex Jones's website InfoWars about the fake city that the Army built in Virginia. They spent $100 million on building a fake city on 300 acres in Virginia to train troops for urban warfare. And they've got a subway tunnel to nowhere with a couple of real subway cars in the tunnel. And they've got a sports stadium. They've got stores, apartment buildings, houses, streets, businesses. You know, it's 300 acres of a fake city. And they're sending troops there to learn to have urban warfare. And they have a manual that's mentioned in the article about this fake city in Virginia that says that this is to train troops to fight urban, domestic, and foreign terrorists. And the domestic terrorists they might be fighting are conservatives and patriots. Well, okay. And then they've got pictures of grandmothers and kids, and they're supposed to shoot those people, too, in this training village or city, fake city. And that's to discriminate, to figure out who's willing to shoot elderly people and children, and those people are going to be out. So when they have these elite squads to go in for the urban warfare, they're going to have pre-selected the ones that have no qualms about shooting old people and children. So, and then there's an Army manual, a training manual associated with this fake city that says that the purpose will be to round up and capture and take all unarmed terrorists, quote unquote terrorists, and send them to FEMA re-education camps where they will be re-educated to, and I love this, quote, appreciate United States policies, unquote.
Okay. Now, Gordon.
So you want to start off your day right, you better appreciate United States policies. It'd be a good way to start the day, Royce.
Well, I try to appreciate as much as I can. I can't say I can manage to succeed in that one, no. At least not always, but I understand where you're coming from. Listen, I wanted to mention also that Vera had another question after you answered her last one, and she was wanting to know, do you think it may be an engineered economic crash? Because she personally thinks that the Pope will make the announcement that all our history, as we have been taught, is a lie. You still there?
The Pope?
Yeah, she wants to know if you think that it was an engineered economic crash. You may have lost your place by now that you said it a while back.
Can you still hear me?
Kind of, but you sound like you're breaking up.
Yeah. Well, if you want to go to the phone, we can, but
no, you're doing better now.
Okay, well, I do not think it's a fake engineered. See, what they've been doing is they've just been pumping up the economy with fake money all along, because it really already has collapsed, except for the fact of these teams they have that monitor the economy. Because, see, in my opinion, the best thing that could happen would be to not have the earth changes, not have pole shift, not have martial law, not have warfare, but have an economic collapse, because right then people would realize that everything they've worked for their whole lives is coming to naught, and they would have to say, wow, I'm not getting any Social Security, I'm not getting my pension, I can't live in my house, I can't pay the bills, and there isn't any company to pay the bills to. And so without being injured and still having everyone intact, a massive economic collapse would force people to form survival communities with small groups of people where they would trade abilities. So somebody that could make forge horseshoes or a shovel or grow food would trade with somebody else who can raise animals and knit clothing, and other people that could build buildings and survival shelters. So to me, the number one thing that you would want to have would be this massive social change. And you would want to have it before any of the disasters, because then people would get on the right bus, you know, like my wife says, the bus is running, are you ready to get on it or not? And I call that the graduation. But really, if you could have that economic collapse, but I can tell you right now that they've been working overtime to prevent that. And even if they have to print more dollars or put some more zeros in a bank account, you know, where it's all digital and nobody really knows what's in there, all of that is a concerted effort to make everybody think, yes, just stay at your job, continue what you're doing, and we'll let you know if there's anything for you to worry about. So really, to me, and I know there's a lot of people listening to this that go, oh God, if I lost my job and and the banks were closed, what would I do? Well, that's the point. At least you're not injured and dying, and you still can get your family together and your friends, and you can go find a safe place to live where you can survive. So I can't think of anything that I would wish more than to have the economy collapse sooner rather than later, because then everybody, by the time the earth disasters come and the pole shift and the awful post pole shift time, the after time they call it, by the time the after time is there, people will have already had some time to practice on, you know, how you're going to survive. Like I tell people, watch those TV shows like Survivor Man and Naked and Afraid, where they're out in the jungle and they've got nothing. They're naked and they were allowed to bring one thing and they've got to survive. These are really interesting shows because they teach you like just as preparation for this, and I know this sounds like very, very difficult, but imagine that one day next week, you and your family do not eat a single thing from a store. You go out and you eat from your yard. Now, that's a real eye-opener, and that's preparation for what's to come. So I know people say, well, really you're like Dr. Doom, and I don't feel like Dr. Doom because my wife and I just feel that, whatever happens, we're just going to deal with it. But that's why we moved to a mountaintop with a blueberry field and no neighbors and within 2 miles of the ocean and lots of animals in the woods to eat and lots of seafood, the crystal clear waters of Acadia National Park. So there's lobster and crabs and herring and mackerel, and there's clams and mussels, and there's scallops, and there's sea urchins, and there's seaweed. So, that's why I say, next weekend, if you have the time, get in your car, drive to a location you've never been before, where you think might be a good survival community, and go have a meal in the town, meet people, talk to them, and see if they're the kind of people that really suit your personality and your way of living, and if you have anything to contribute. And everybody has something to contribute, whether they think so or not, but when they're in that situation, I'm sure they're going to find something. So, like, for instance, Janet and I have thought, well, if nothing else, we could go get seawater. We live with a wood stove anyway, and we could heat the seawater and evaporate it until we got sea salt, and then we could sell sea salt, because who can live without salt? And probably, because really, let's say you didn't have any money, but you thought, oh, I'm all set because I got gold. Well, who's going to trade you gold? What are they going to do with it? They're not going to do anything with it. So it's like a false preparation. It really doesn't do you any good. So, but, in the after time, don't you think salt would be worth as much as gold, that you could trade that for all kinds of things? Because where are people going to get salt that are inland?
Right.
Most of the salt in this country comes from under Ohio, and if Ohio's totally flooded and all those salt mines are underwater, nobody's going to get any salt from Ohio. And you're certainly not going to import it from Spain. So where are you going to get salt? Well, of course, salt water is going to go from the Gulf of Mexico up to the Great Lakes, and the Great Lakes are going to be salt, and the St. Lawrence Seaway is going to rip open. And so the eastern part of the United States is going to be like a continental island compared to the rest of North America. It's going to be like Australia to the west and this little ribbon of land like New Zealand, and that will be from Maine to the Appalachians down to Atlanta. So all of this ties together, and you really ought to be thinking about all these things when you're listening to me, and after you do a little research and you see that it's not so far-fetched. Why is the government getting ready? Why have all the agencies moved out of Washington, D.C., and they're all set up in Denver? The IRS, NASA, the CIA, wasn't Washington, D.C. good enough for them? And so these are all pieces of the puzzle. But unless you have another question, I'm going to get back to my the incidents that Janet and I have been having since December 26th, when she had that dream that they said, we're always with you.
I got an announcement, rather, if you don't mind me cutting in for a quickie on that one. But I received news while I was listening to you talk that my stream that I mentioned at the beginning of the show with tunein.com has been accepted. So anybody that has a mobile device, we still got 45 minutes left. If anyone is interested in running over to tunein.com and downloading their application on their phone, they can search for Talk Now Radio and pull up the stream on their phone if they're having any trouble getting into the site with their mobiles. Just thought that might be useful to somebody before the show is over. You never can tell who might get the information.
Yeah, Royce, does that have archive stuff like for 24 hours you can still listen to the last show or anything like that?
Not to my knowledge, they don't have the archive, but you'd have to check their website. However, my shows are always going to be archived over at YouTube as well as on this site. And as you know, Gordon, tomorrow, the next day, I'll be sending you links to the archives.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, a link to YouTube would be great.
Oh,
so
you'll get it.
I used to send out emails announcing my shows, but then I discovered that I was getting worse and worse interference every time, so I stopped doing that. So if I do a show now, it's pretty much a surprise. But because the people are archiving them to YouTube, it's not like it's lost. You can always go listen to it whenever you want, and you should, you know. You know, I'm not selling anything, and I don't have a book, and I don't have a website. And if you do a Google search, you should come up with about 90,000 links for my name. And they're all interviews that I've done. So that's how much talking I've been doing.
Oh, yeah. I'm very well aware of the fact that you have been on, let's see, George Nuri. I think you've also been on Jeff Rentz. Have you ever been interviewed by Art Bell?
No, I never was.
I'm not sure about Rentz. I'm guessing about that one.
Oh, I wasn't. I've never been on Rentz. No.
Okay, then I was wrong about that one. My apologies. I don't know where I got that idea.
Almost everybody else.
Yeah, almost everybody else. That might be why I assume, because it's been everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway. So the first incident that I described was when Janet was reassured that the extraterrestrials are always with us, or with her, not necessarily me, but always her. And then she had that incident the next night that involved her sister, and her sister was like, "Oh, did you see that full moon?" Well, it was the new moon. There was no moon. You know, come on, Nancy. But then the third incident, you're going to love this incident. Now, you're aware, as I said in of the show, that the ETs usually use a screen memory, and a very popular memory is screen memory is an owl. I mean, that's pretty well accepted in anybody that studied UFO incidents, that there's a screen memory implanted so people don't remember the exact details, and it usually involves owls.
As a matter of fact,
so,
you're not
listen
the only
to this
one that
story.
has talked about this screen memory on my show. I want to say, was it Stephen Pierce? Was it somebody? There was somebody else that was on my show that mentioned it as well. Can't remember off the top of my head who it was.
Yeah. So anyway, 7 miles away is our biggest grocery store. I mean, that's the one we go to unless we're in a really big city, and it's a modern, ultra modern, super grocery store. It's big. And it used to be around here on the coast of Maine that once the fall came, nobody was around. Every place was like a ghost town. And then gradually these multimillionaires that are trying to establish a second home in a safety place have built mansions in Maine. And now they started going up here and the holidays like Christmas and Easter and stuff like that. So Janet went to the grocery store to buy something. And it was in between Christmas and New Year's. So, there's an older well, I don't know if he's single, he might be married, but there's an older father with a young son who's probably 7 years old. And we've seen them around town. We've never talked to them. We don't know their name. We know nothing about them, but clearly the father is always intently focused on the son. And we get the impression from looking at him that the kid is autistic. And like if the father doesn't hold his hand, the kid might, just dart out into the road and get run over or get into some other trouble, So he's trying to hold his hand and always be focused on talking directly to the kid. So because of that, we've theorized that it seems that the kid is probably autistic. He seems very bright though, but it's like the father has to control him in a way that he doesn't get into trouble, because obviously the kid he's not like a normal kid that would think of everything, all the variables and put it together. He would get into trouble if his father wasn't constantly refocusing his attention. So Janet goes into the grocery store. She gets her shopping cart. The place is packed. And from 50 feet away, this kid sees Janet and has this immense facial expression of recognition. And it's like he's trying to say something to her, but every time he forms the sentence, before he can get it out, a screen memory comes back in, and all the kid can say, and Janet heard it from when he started over at his father 50 feet away, he said, owl, owl, owl. and he ran towards Janet with his arms open, and he jumped into her shopping cart and was looking at her like, I remember you from being on a flying saucer. And I'm trying to say that, but for some reason the only word that comes out is owl, owl, owl. And he keeps saying owl over and over. That's because he was trying to talk to Janet like as if, whoever I saw you on the flying saucer, now that I see you in the grocery store, I'm remembering how pleasant it was on the flying saucer. I want you to bring me back on the flying saucer. So if I jump in your shopping cart, that's what will happen. So Janet's like looking at him saying that, and he's a very good looking kid and he's very pleasant, and Janet was smiling at him, and the father came rushing over, grabbed the kid by the shoulders and pulled him out of the shopping cart, and he goes, I'm really sorry. I don't know why he said that. And of course Janet and I are looking at each other like, yeah, we know why he said that, because he remembers being on a flying saucer with us. And you see, like, I guess, I don't know what you think of this, but they have these open mic things in our area, probably in most places they have that. And like some people will have this open mic evening, and you go in and you sign up and you're given 20 minutes and sometimes there's a potluck dinner with it and stuff like that. So Janet and I have gone to a few of these, and I sign up for 20 minutes and nobody knows what I'm going to do. Most people are singing or playing music that they wrote in this open mic, but nobody has any idea what I'm going to do. And when I get up, I have big blown up pictures of the Earth after poleshift. I've got pictures of extraterrestrials, and I start talking about Planet X, poleshift, and extraterrestrials. And let's say there's 150 people in the room. Roughly 147 of them are smirking, sneering, and snickering at me talking. And there's like 3 people in the room that are looking at me really intently. And when I finish my 20 minutes, people are like, well, that was weird, but let's get some music. And then I'm walking through the room. Those 3 people come up to me and they go, wow, thank you for doing that. Nobody listens to anybody about anything, but you're completely right. And at least you told them all. So that's what we do normally, Royce. So that's us. That's the kind of people we are. So is it really that much of a stretch to think that if the groups of aliens for each area are bringing people up on saucers every night to tell them what's going to be happening in the future, and that every single thing that you expect and know about in life is going to change? There isn't anything about your life that isn't going to change unless you're a caring, considerate, loving person. Then that will never change. And so, would it be surprising that they would bring Janet and me up on the ships, and then when they take the other people up there, we could say, see, you thought we were kidding, but here you are. Now you're on a flying saucer. What do you think of that? And here are aliens, and they're not going to hurt you. They actually care for us, and they're trying to warn us about what's going to be happening so that when it happens, our screen memories will go away, and we'll wake up and we'll remember all this stuff. So isn't that really interesting that this kid, he probably said ow, ow, ow maybe 5 or 10 times before he got over to the shopping cart and climbed in like, okay, Janet, take me. And that's when the father got there, like a fraction of a second later, and took him away. But isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is. This is a pretty frequent occurrence for her.
What's a frequent occurrence?
I mean, these encounters you're describing, are these pretty frequent encounters she has?
No, that's the first time that ever happened. But, you don't know what's going on in an autistic kid. I mean, I saw a show on TV. There was a whole series of them in a row, and it was about autistic savants, that they may not be able to function in a normal way, the way people think of normal, but yet they're unbelievably brilliant in other ways. Like, I've got a friend whose daughter doesn't want to do anything. She doesn't want to go to school. She's 13. She doesn't want to help out with the family. She doesn't care how you're feeling or anybody else's feeling. She doesn't want anything to do with any people. What she likes to do, he gave her her own portable DVD player. She can take any movie, and that's what she likes to do, is take movies, movie after movie after movie, and just put it in the DVD player and watch it. And by watching it once, she can almost repeat word for word every line of dialogue in every movie. Now, where does a skill like that come from? I mean, I couldn't do that.
My son Joshua used to do that, but it's very rare for anybody to be able to. The odd thing about him was he was not autistic that I know of.
Right, he's just a savant, as they call it, where you've got some unusual skill. I saw another kid that was like this black guy. He's the most incredible sculptor of animals I've ever seen in my life. And I'm thinking, why is he living in public housing and stuff? He's making these sculptures of horses that are so lifelike, and they're about 12 inches high. Somebody should be blowing that stuff up into an 8-foot statue and casting it out of bronze, and he could be a multi-millionaire tomorrow. I mean, these animals were like, oh, it's like, it was even more exciting than looking at a live animal, looking at his sculptures. And just so many of these people are so talented, but some people say, like Edgar Cayce says, that autistic children are people who were hermits in previous lifetime, and they actually intentionally shunned everyone, and they just as soon prefer to keep it that way. So they have to be re-socialized, and they don't really want to be re-socialized. But in terms of surviving, I mean, if you're raising an autistic kid, you're thinking, what's going to happen when he's 21 and I'm 60, and what's going to happen when he's 40 and I'm 80, So everybody's trying to re-socialize them. But so anyway, so those are the first 3 incidents, okay? So then, usually I go with my wife, has an appointment every Wednesday. Usually I go with her, and I don't go to her appointment, but I just use that as an opportunity because we go to the city, and there's a lot of different stores there, and you can get things, and so, and, sometimes we go out to breakfast or lunch, or sometimes even stay later and go to dinner. So I'm thinking, well, I should go, but then I thought, well, no, I don't really feel like it. So I decided to stay home. So it's a Wednesday. It's heavily overcast, but it's a bright overcast, but you can't see any clouds, details, or blue sky. But it's a bright overcast, and I had the TV down, and I'm laying on the couch reading a newspaper, and it's about 12 noon. Now, I told you we have a lot of snow here in Maine.
Yes, a whole lot.
Anyone who lives around snow knows that when it's cold enough and you walk through snow, you get this crunching sound from your boots, and you also get this little squeaky sound. I'm not sure why that is, but it's something to do with the temperature in the ice crystals. So it's pretty distinctive to hear somebody walking through the snow. And what we do is we take the tractor and we scrape our yard down as hopefully to the dirt, but most of the time not. And at that time, this is about the week after New Year's. At that time, we dropped the bucket and drove backwards, scraping the yard and the driveway, and we were able to get everything except about a 2-inch hard-packed white snow. And then we had been walking on that with different pairs of shoes and stuff, and there's probably maybe a 1/16 of an inch of powder. And there's all these footprints out there from various shoes that Janet wears and various shoes that I wear, to the point where you can't really tell like what footprint is where. It's not like this was untouched snow. So I'm laying on the couch. I'm reading the newspaper. It's so quiet. There's no wind, so it's really quiet. You could hear a pin drop outside. And I'm laying on the couch, and to the north I've got this full-length glass door. So I'm laying on the couch, and all of a sudden I hear from 50 feet away, crunch, crunch, crunch. And it sounded like each step took them, 2 to 3 feet closer towards my door, where I've got this granite door stone that I described. It's 4 feet by 3 feet, and it's 3 inches thick, and I cut it myself. And that's when you go out the door, that's what you're standing on. Then you're in the yard when you get off of that. So walking right towards the door. So I go, holy crap, who in the hell is that? Because sometimes I can hear people starting at the bottom of the mountain a mile away. If it's quiet enough, I can hear a truck starting off the highway to come up the mountain. And then I can usually hear a car, sometimes a half mile or a quarter of a mile, but I always at least, let's say, 1,000, no, not 1,000 yards, maybe 300 yards away. That's where I first start hearing a car. And then when they come into the yard, of course, that's really obvious. So I didn't hear any vehicle at all. So I'm like, who in the hell is this and where did they come from? Because also we had an ice storm. So all the woods, and I mean, it's so thick that you can't even go through it without an axe or a machete or a saw anyway. You know, you have to keep on a trail. And even then, with all the trees bent over, because we had an ice storm that put an inch of ice on everything, and then it was so cold that with everything bent over to the ground and snowed in, it stayed frozen like that for like 2.5 weeks. So even after it started melting, the trees were like permanently bent. And there are a lot of permanently bent white birches that you can see everywhere because they're the most likely to bend. But all kinds of trees. And then other trees that couldn't bend were just, you'd hear it like it'd be like a gunshot, and that's a branch ripping off the tree because of the weight of the ice.
You'd hear a loud crack, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you hear a crack, and sometimes it's so loud, it's such a big branch that it sounds like somebody fired a shotgun. So anyway, I'm thinking, who the hell is this, and where the hell did they come from? So I rotate off the couch and put my slippers on, and the door is like 6 feet from me. So I'm thinking, well, they're going to be at the door in any second, so I'm going to meet them at the door. So I jump up, and I walk towards the door, and just then the last footstep ends at the doorstone. And I mean, I have really good hearing. I mean, I can hear people whispering in a busy restaurant from 20 feet away. So nothing much gets by me, with hearing. And so I look through the glass door, and there's nobody there, Royce. So I go, what the hell? And I open the door. I've got my slippers on, and I step out on the doorstone, and I look around. Now I've got a 180-degree view because the door is in the center of the north side of the house. So I look around, and there's nobody there. And then I look on the ground, and I realize I can't tell where the footprints are. And so then I walk over to the driveway, which is about 30 feet away, to the near edge of the driveway. And I first heard the footsteps on the far edge of the driveway, which is another 20 feet. So I figure that it was somebody about my size and weight, because it was the kind of sound, like if I put on my Vibram work boots and I walk on the driveway, that's the sound I would make. So, I figured it was somebody about my height and weight, at least 200 pounds, at least 6 feet tall, with an invisibility suit. And so I walk out into the driveway, and now I can see, because we're at the top of the mountain and it's all blueberry fields, ankle high. So I can see like 200 feet in all directions, and there's nothing moving, there's no breathing, there's no footsteps, there's no accidentally stepping on a branch, there's no nothing. And I wished I had a 20-foot bamboo pole that I could wave around my head like a samurai sword, because I probably would have hit him, So I'm like, what in the hell is that? So I called a psychic friend that I have in San Diego, and she's really a good psychic. And she goes, I told you that 2 days after Christmas, 2013 was almost like a lull, but 2 days after Christmas, stuff is really going to start moving, and there's something really big is going to happen, and two things really big are going to happen in 2014. One of them is very good, and one is very bad. And she goes, I'm not going to tell you when either event is happening, and I'm not going to tell you what's good and what's bad. But she said that I just got a phone call. I was turning my phone off. So she said, it's driving the government absolutely nuts why you got flying saucers over at your house all the time. And they made the mistake of thinking that you went with your wife. And they had a guy with the invisibility suit come up, and he was going to try and pick the lock and get in your house and see if you have some way of contacting the aliens or what you got going on in there. And they were surprised as hell that you were home. And if you don't believe that, would you please go to YouTube and go to the YouTube and then write in Invisible Man in the search box. And you will see that there are some videos that were shot like in a war zone. And there's one real famous one in particular. And there's this like blurry area crossing the street. And on the left in the frame is a U.S. Army. It's either an armored personnel vehicle or it's a tank. And on the left, there, they left a message. And then on the left, as he walks in front of the tank, he suddenly becomes visible. And you see that he's not wearing an invisibility suit. He's wearing just a regular shirt and pants and boots. And he's been invisible as he walked across over to and when he gets in front of this tank or this Humvee or whatever it is, all of a sudden he becomes visible. So if you watch that, so I have had no doubt that the government has an invisibility cloak, and it must be some small device. When they turn it on, it cloaks them totally because they don't have to go around like the Michelin Man.
Well,
in
I
a
tell
big
you,
suit.
what I read on that, Gordon, was that and this was about 3-4 years ago, I saw it on Google News, that they do have an invisibility like cloak or clothing, and it's not a small device really, so much as it is a particular kind of reflective material that the light don't reflect off very well, so that it doesn't actually show you as long as you're wearing it, and it just kind of makes you blend into the background because the light ain't reflecting good.
Yeah, well, see, really, if he had come here in person, I probably would have invited him in and say, look, I don't even know when the ETs are coming. I don't know when they're going to take us, and it's not in my control, and I don't have any special devices. And what they're really doing is they're really concerned about telling everybody about Planet X coming and causing pole shift, and then disclosing extraterrestrials to the whole world. So, actually, I'd probably tell them, if they asked, most of what they wanted to know. But still, isn't that interesting that those three incidents would occur? First of all, Janet seeing the spherical mothership, then her being in a dream with her sister who saw the full moon when it wasn't the full moon, and then the kid that said owl, owl, owl and climbed in her shopping cart. So,
so you think
to me,
there's
that's a
connecting
confirmation.
thread, a connecting message between all of it?
Yeah, that the government's wondering how come I'm sure that whatever devices they have, they can detect that there's a lot of times there's flying saucers over our house. So they're like wondering what the hell does that mean, and like, do we have some special transmitter or, what the government would think, or ask. So, but, in fact, we don't.
They want to know, are you
Janet,
colluding with any of the ETs? Are you conspiring and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I'm like an open book. If I learn something, I tell it usually in a radio interview. So I don't know what deep secrets. And see, I don't even remember, like when I wake up in the morning, I don't remember a dream where I was in Disneyland with some clowns and Nancy was going around the edges of the room marveling at the technology. I mean, I don't remember that. I don't remember the kid. I don't remember, but I can tell you that is the kind of stuff that I would do. So, maybe, and probably they give me a screen memory because I probably would say every detail of whatever I learned. So, but anyway, I hardly ever remember a dream, and Janet almost always remembers her dreams. So then it turns out there's a fifth incident. When I first brought it up to you, there was a fourth incident. That was the fourth incident. 3 UFO related incidents, then the military government incident with the invisible man. And then the fifth incident is yesterday Janet went into a store to buy a loaf of bread, and there was this guy there, and she asked him if they had any bread, and it turned out they're a small place, and they were going to make the bread the next day, so there was no bread. But anyway, he stopped her, and he said, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I saw 2 white lights over my yard with my friend, and we were wondering, like, what does that mean? Are those stars, or what are they? And he goes, and we were studying them, trying to figure it out, and all of a sudden they zoomed towards us, and they just barely missed the peak of the house. And he goes, I don't know why I had to tell you that. So to me, that's another person that's seen Janet up on a flying saucer, and just naturally, without thinking about it, because he knew her from that, he had to tell her that he had seen a UFO over his house with a friend to watch it.
Well,
So,
I got a question for you, Gordon.
Sure, let's get some questions.
I'm
here.
sorry, I didn't know I was fixing to interrupt you there, so please forgive me for stepping on you. But
I was pretty well finished.
Oh, you
I
was?
wanted to take
Okay.
some questions.
But I was pretty well wondering, what's the possibility that perhaps you and Janice may not have seen flying saucers in your backyard, but rather the government or another party was implanting these memories in your head, for misinformation purposes or something like that, and you thought you saw them, it was really something that was planted in you.
Yeah, well, that would really be great if you're a skeptic and you found that out. Then you'd go, see, I knew that it wasn't true what he's saying. But I hate to tell you that it actually was, like on Friday the 27th, it actually was rainy and drizzly. We're going out to get firewood, so this is not in the middle of the night. And you got to realize we don't have any neighbors. We don't look out on any other houses. There's no neighbors. So if somebody's going to come and set something up or do something like that, it's not like they can rent the house next door and listen through the walls or spy through the windows or install a camera with a transmitter and listen to it. They can't do that up here. There's no way. Being at the top of a mountain with no trees and 34-acre blueberry farm, there's no way that anybody can come up to this house and do anything without making themselves pretty damn obvious. So the idea that this could be a setup or that we've been programmed is extremely unlikely. And I mean, if you want to get into just like Janet seeing the spherical mothership, I saw a mothership over San Juan, Puerto Rico in 1964 with my mother and brother, and that was a mile in diameter. It was circular on the bottom and absolutely flat as a pancake and hemispherical on the top. So it was like if you cut the top half off a grapefruit and flew that through the sky, that's what this looked like. And it was glowing bright orange, and it had no detail on it. It looked like it was made of milk glass, a mile in diameter, and had an orange light bulb in the center. And we were coming back from a tour of the Bacardi rum factory, and it was 8:00 at night, and we're on the top deck of the ferry because we've never, that was our first trip to Puerto Rico and to see the lights of San Juan because the Bacardi rum factory's on an island offshore. So coming back on the ferry was about a half-hour trip, and we're looking up, and this little glow started, and it looked like the sun was going to rise in the middle of the night sky, and then all of a sudden this thing, like the top half of a grapefruit, a mile in diameter, moves out, and it has no detail, and we're watching it, and as we watch it, a door opens that you couldn't see until it opened, and slowly out of this open door, like a hangar door or a garage door, but big, a flying saucer flew out and went east over the Atlantic and kept on going and disappeared. And that was orange, and that was definitely a disc. And it had a dome on top, and it was metal, but it was ionizing the air around it, orangey red. And then a second flying saucer flew out, and then a third. Then the door closed. When the door closed, you couldn't tell that door had even been there. And in proportion to the size of the mothership and the size of the saucers, it was like mosquito next to a Kodiak bear, a grizzly bear. And I said to my mother, because I was studying aerospace engineering and astrophysics, and at the time I was 15, I was selected to be a future astronaut, and I said, my God, do you realize what we just saw? And my mother and brother, well, that's interesting, but what's for dinner? And I'm like, forget dinner. Forget dinner, but see, these are the kinds of incidents that we've had. So I've never seen the same ship twice, and I've seen cylinders, discs with pontoons. I've seen top hats, needles, spheres, fuzzy cotton ball type spheres, silver ball bearing type spheres, and all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, Janet and I together have seen over 36 stuff. So, there's a book called I Know What I Saw, and just let those words sink in. What am I getting out of telling you this stuff? Nothing, unless what I'm saying is true. So think about that. But if you want to be skeptical, go have fun. Because even if the president were to announce it, which, in my opinion, as I said, logically, I figured out he's got to. Whether it's today, this month, next year, whenever it is, it's going to be before poleshift, and he's going to announce it. That's my conclusion, just using logic. But even when it gets announced, there's still going to be a certain percentage of the population, maybe it's a third, maybe it's half, I don't know, that are going to go, well, that's a bunch of BS. I'm not going to pay any attention to that. And they're just going to continue as before. So there's that big word, denial. And,
right.
So
now, real quick, because we got 11 minutes left.
Yeah. Hurry.
Somebody in the chat room has asked, they want to know when you're abducted if you fly through the air.
Oh, yes. My first incident was in 1968, I said, because see, I don't know, the National Geographic had this article about the explorer gene, and some people have it and some don't, and I'm sure I have it. But anyway, when I was born, my father was already interested in UFOs and had books all over the house, like on Roswell and on telepathy and Edgar Cayce and psychics and you name it. And he had been kicked out of the Catholic Church after his first divorce. So he thought, how can God kick you out of the church? Maybe there's more to what's going on than that. So he traveled around the world and he would buy books and bring them home. And I was the only one in the family that was interested in them. And I was pretty interested, in that. And, so, I had a lot of experience, but instead of like, how some people, they go, well, there's evidence of a flying saucer. I wonder if there's any other evidence. So not me. I was reading the book going, wow, this guy contacted, aliens. I want to contact aliens. And how do I do that? And I'm like, well, there's no school for telepathy. There's no school you can go to for contacting aliens. So I thought, well, I'll teach myself telepathy. So starting in 1968, whenever it was a clear night, I'd walk out and look at the stars and I'd say, I know there's the same up there as down here, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I don't want to have anything to do with the bad or the ugly. So if there's any good ETs that can hear me, I'd like to be taken up on a saucer. And not a damn thing happened for 20 years, and I didn't know what progress I was making, although I was having lots of interesting incidents. It made me think that I was, they were aware of me. In 1988, I heard a clear voice say, we're on a saucer and we're coming to take you on board. And I ran over to it, and it was 150 feet in diameter. It had a flashing red, white, and blue light at the top center of the disc and the bottom center. It did not have a dome on the disc. It was just a giant disc. But squished into the lower part of it were these two 100-foot long sausages, like maybe they were pontoons or crew compartments. And as I was running towards it, I was going, red, white, and blue flashing lights on the top and the bottom. That's like our national colors. And so I ran over and I said, beam me up, which was partly a joke because that was like a lifelong dream, right? For 20 years, I've been trying to get this, and now it's happening. So how excited was I? I was really excited. So I'm looking up, and the floor of the bottom of the disc, not right where the flashing light was, but off to the side a little bit, but pretty much close to the center, opens up, and this green light comes down and picks me right off the ground. And there I am, floating up about 150 feet, right up into the bottom of the ship, and the floor closed, and I'm standing there, and this other door opened, and this human that could walk down any street in the world, and nobody would know he was an extraterrestrial, came out and talked to me, and he's a human from the Pleiades. And we talked for about 3 or 4 hours, and then they put me back the same way. So yes, I have had that happen, and that was not a dream, that was conscious. There was somebody with me. When she got on the ship, she was sound asleep, standing up. For 3 hours, she was just standing there like she was a statue. And then it turns out there was another person on the ground that saw the whole thing. So, I don't know what to tell you. But yes,
well,
I've had lots of interest.
Pardon me, sorry about that. I know that I've talked to Michael Horn on behalf of Billy Meyer, and they say the same thing you do, that the Pleiadians have an almost human-like appearance, and that they could walk down the street, you almost wouldn't know them from your own mother or brother. Except,
you've got to realize, Michael Horn is another, I've never met him, and I wouldn't even want to at this point, but, who's Betty Hill, remember her? Betty and Barney had the first reported UFO abduction in 1961. It was called Interrupted Journey, the book about it. Remember that?
I'm trying to remember. That sounds kind of vague.
Well, her husband was black and she was white, and they lived in New Hampshire.
Benny. Oh, yeah, that's right, because I've had
Betty.
their niece, Kathleen, on my show.
Yeah, exactly, her niece. So we went to, they used to have a UFO conference every year in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So we would go there, and Janet and I drink coffee and smoke cigarettes, and so did Betty Hill. So, and Barney was dead by then. This is in the mid-90s. And so we would always find ourselves outside of this conference hall together, smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee. So we'd start telling Betty what happened to us, and she goes, listen, she goes, my incident is the only true incident. Everyone else is lying. Well, okay, Betty, and then we, like 4 years in a row, we're outside this conference hall every year for a day, talking to Betty, drinking coffee, and she's telling us we're making up everything and hers is the only real one. Well, that's what I feel with Michael Horn. He is, I don't want to insult him, although I can think of a few choice phrases, but he never had any experiences. He's like the spokesman for the Billy Meyer group. And he maintains that Billy's is the only true experience and everyone else is lying. Well, how likely is that, I really feel sorry for people that say that, but if they have to use that to justify their own, that makes their story better, I don't think so. I think listening to the millions of people that say they've had contact with ETs makes it more believable than saying the only one in the world was Betty Hill. I'm sure if you got Betty Hill and Michael Horn in the same room, they would have, and Betty's dead now, of course, but passed away, but if they got him in the same room, they'd have an argument, and I can just think of what the words are. Michael saying, the only true UFO incident in contact is Billy Meyer, and Betty going, no, everyone's a liar that says they had anything happen to him, because my experience with my husband Barney and I, that's the only true experience, and everyone else is liars. So you could imagine that going on endlessly, because over 4 years, that's all we heard. Like, we'd be outside of this conference hall taking breaks, and we'd try and tell Betty some other thing that happened to us, and she'd go, no, you're all lying. My incident is the only true one. Well, okay, if you people like that the only thing that's real is what happened to them, well, fine, I'm glad that makes you happy, but how likely is it? And it isn't, Royce.
Well, yeah, I think it'd be unlikely for anybody to have the only true experience, like you say. I think it is possible for people to actually believe that, even if it ain't true. I mean, people believe things that ain't true all the time.
Well, I'm not judging them. I'm just like, please, Janet and I know what we saw. We know what happened to us. And do I sound like a stupid idiot that makes up stuff? No, I know I don't.
Okay. Now, I show we got 3 minutes left, and I really don't think you ran out of information. But I tell you what we can do. As you heard me say a minute ago, I'm planning to do a open mic night this coming Wednesday in place of the show that I did have, and I'm taking any and all callers who've got something to say. You can always feel free to call in and speak your piece during the show along with everybody else.
Okay, or you could call me and ask me just before the show and ask me if I want to do that, because who knows what I'll be doing Wednesday night. But I know, we're supposed to have a bee meeting, the first bee meeting in 6 months. It's been so cold for the second year in a row. All my beehives have died. It's really sad. But I do want to go to that bee meeting. That's 7:00 Eastern time till 10:00 Eastern time, because it takes. We'd have to leave at 6 and get back at 10. So how does that sound?
That sounds like you're going to miss the show altogether, so I wouldn't worry about it. But you know me, we can always have you back in the future.
Yeah, have me back if you like. And also, Royce, you booked me for Thursday, March 6th on your show on Revolution Radio.
Thank you for reminding me, Revolution Radio. We're going to, matter of fact, we can take up this,
And that's 6 days after the supposed announcement, because that's 6 days, that March 6th, that's 6 days into March, and the announcement's supposed to take place in February. It'd be interesting to discuss whether or not it happened, and if it did, of course, what that means.
took the words right out of my mouth. I'd be looking forward to, see if that one comes down or not. And, again, what we think about it, and if we think it's going to happen, just been postponed, or, what all's going to come down, because even if it don't happen, who knows what other plans there might be in the making.
Right, and this is from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock Eastern time. So
right, which would be
right,
2 to 4
right,
Central Time.
Right.
So folks, I want to thank you all.
Thank you very much for having me, Royce, and I thank all the listeners for sticking with me, and I hope everybody found it extremely interesting, and I'll always be ready to come back and talk some more about some more stuff if you like.
That sounds like a winner. You have a good one, and thank you very much for coming. It's been a pleasure having you like usual. And folks, I'd like to thank you all for listening in. We'll be having this thing put in the archive by tomorrow or the next day, depending on how busy I get around here. And don't forget, Wednesday's going to be open mic night. And don't forget that also Thursday, and let me double check my calendar before I tell somebody the wrong thing by mistake. Thursday the 20th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. I'll be making my debut over at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps. And they